Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's great doing exactly what I thought I would be doing on this lovely Wednesday night. It's a live show, Tony, involving a former Dartmouth assistant football coach, just as we all planned.
Been waiting for it, and boom, here it is. Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports reporting that Ohio State is bolstering its offensive line coaching staff, which is pretty surprising in the depth and the breadth of what they're doing. Hiring most recently, the Purdue offensive line coach, Marcus Johnson, and most recently, Oklahoma State offensive line coach, Charlie Dickey, to help out in the quote unquote senior analyst type roles, as Zaynat said. But of course, we know anybody on a staff can now actually participate in the coaching. And then shortly after that, also mentioned that Ohio State is also expected to hire Wandy Laurent as an analyst, and he is a former Penn State offensive lineman from about not quite a decade ago, but has been the associate head coach and tight ends coach at Dartmouth, and also worked at Penn State as a grad assistant back in 2020 and 2021. So bolstering an offensive line staff, which I wonder if this tells us anything about Tim Drevno's situation, because we've been wondering, like, what's his status. And now you bring in three new guys. We knew they would have to replace Justin Frye, which they did with Tyler Bowen, but we also knew they'd have to replace Mike Seleni, which I don't even know if any of these guys have done that. And I don't know that grad assistants are going to be a thing anymore moving forward. There's been some talk about getting rid of those. So they may have done that with this entire broad sweep here.
Yeah, Mike Seleni, for those who don't know, was the grad assistant for the offensive line last year. He took the job as the offensive line coach at UNLV. So when he and Justin Frye both left, those were kind of the two guys, other than Tim Drevno, who had been working most directly with the Ohio State offensive line last year. So this is kind of part of so you won the national championship. And after you get to go meet, who was it? Kelly Clarkson. Who was he? Whose show was Ryan Day on? Kelly Clarkson, yeah, and Jimmy Fallon. Like after all that, then you have to go replace most of your coaching staff because everyone's like, "Ooh, I want some of that." I see that confetti. I want guys who've touched that confetti before because maybe they can let me touch some confetti later. So this is kind of a normal part of the coach hiring process. They've done pretty well in terms of not losing too many of the real high up guys. Obviously, Jim Knowles and Justin Frye are kind of some exceptions there, but in a lot of the guys a little lower on the ladder, a lot of those guys get an opportunity to cash in and capitalize on that national championship. So that's what's happened here, and that's good for them. Like that's a great thing. This is a great chance to move up in the coaching world. But yeah, you're replacing a lot of guys lower on that chart. And then, we're talking, Mike Seleni is probably one of the more high profile guys who we're going to be talking about in terms of like who they're replacing. There's a lot of these guys whose names you don't know, but who play important roles. And these are guys who are going to be coming in and who are going to be playing important roles, but these are not names you're probably going to be hearing a bunch on Gus Johnson is not going to be saying these names a lot on the broadcast, but these are important positions because, as Tony said, these are guys who now can take a much more direct role in the coaching than they did in previous seasons. And over the years, there used to be like real tight restrictions on when they could do and what they could do. And there can't be a football out there and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that stuff has kind of gone by the wayside. So now these are guys who can take a much bigger role this coming season.
I'm gonna push back on the Gus Johnson thing because I can hear him talking about Marcus Young Money Johnson during the game with the camera shot of young Marcus Johnson, who you went and he's been at Purdue, he's been at Mississippi State, and I went and looked at his all-time recruiting list, and he's also been at Missouri. When he was at Mississippi State, he landed commitments from top 10 player in the nation, Charles Cross, 5-star offensive tackle, 2 other 4-star offensive tackles. Now, these are all in-state kids, all Mississippi kids. And this is not necessarily, he can't go out and recruit, but he can be part of the recruiting process on campus there in the Woody. Interestingly, though, Tom, Marcus Johnson began his career at Duke. about 12 years ago and spent about 6 or 7 years on staff with Jim Knowles. Also, Charlie Dickey, who we just mentioned, who came over from Oklahoma State, also spent a few years on the same staff with Jim Knowles at Oklahoma State. Do you think that Ryan Day reached out to Jim Knowles for like, hey, you got any names? And if he did, is that a smart move?
This reminds me of Moneyball, where it's like, okay, well, we don't have Jim Knowles anymore, but what if we could recreate him in aggregate from people who've coached with him in all these previous seasons? Because not only that, Jim Knowles went to school and coached at Cornell. And while Dartmouth is not Cornell, it is an Ivy League school located fairly far north. So Wandy Laurent obviously can sort of bring in the Northern Ivy League school vibe. So yeah, there's, I'm not saying this is your worst theory, but it's like a 7.5 out of 10 in terms of your worst theories. But these are definitely guys who are Jim Knowles adjacent. That probably says more about the somewhat insular nature of the coaching fraternity nationally, and how guys, you are never more than, the Kevin Bacon game. Like, you're almost never more than about 3 steps away from any coach if you're in the FBS kind of coaching realm. So there's probably a little more of that than, just like, well, I don't know. How are these guys' hairlines? How do they feel about McDonald's coffee? I don't know. I guess, whenever we get to talk to Ryan Day again, those will be certainly the first questions that I ask him.
I'll ask about Charlie Dickey's on base percentage.
Smart. Yes.
Here's a more legitimate 3 degrees. The 2019 Mississippi State coaching staff featured Marcus Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Also featured, Tom, do you remember the name Adam Shire, who was in 2017 a kicking assistant for Ohio State, also on that Mississippi State coaching staff? Here's another name, Tom. Let me see if you remember this one. Billy Fessler.
I do remember Billy Fessler. Mm-hmm.
Was on that coaching staff. He is now, of course, Ohio State's quarterbacks coach. So maybe Ryan Day talked to Billy Fessler more than perhaps Jim Knowles. Who's to say? Mm-hmm. I'm just covering all of our bases. So it is also interesting, Tom, you're bringing in all of these offensive line coaches, because let's not forget, the last time Tyler Bowen coached the offensive line was like 2017. So it's not like he's learning on the job, but he's going to have a lot of help in getting this group together.
Oh, for sure. And this is, the offensive line is, I don't know that people really completely understand like how technique driven the offensive line is. Like it is really, offensive line coaching is very difficult, because you had Justin Fry, who did, by all accounts, a really good job with the coaching piece of it. And then the recruiting piece was where he sometimes was, judged to have fallen a little bit short. Those are 2 completely different skill sets, the recruiting skill set and the development skill set. And it is very difficult to find the whole package in one shot. And this is, I think, a way to bring in some, probably, this will be a great Ross Fulton show at some point. Like, so tell me about the diverse run schemes, run by these coaches at all of their previous stops. That's a great Ross Fulton show. Ross, if you're watching, go ahead and start watching some film, and we can talk about, the Mississippi State run game during that period versus the Dartmouth run game versus the Oklahoma State and whatever else run games. Like, these are guys who can come in and be teachers, and you mentioned that they can't go on the road recruiting. You're still limited in terms of who can actually go on the road recruiting. And it's still limited to it's like 10 assistants plus the head coach at any given time. These are the guys who can stay and teach. These are the guys who can stay and coach. These are guys who, some of those restrictions have been lifted in terms of what you can do. So while you have your good recruiting coach on the road, you can have these guys coaching and teaching at, closer to home. And, we've seen also that LaCharles Bentley has been around the program a little bit. So I think, they've been very proactive in terms of, hey, the offensive line was a really big key to where the 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes ended up. And now you've got to replace your top 4 tackles from last year's team, as you and I talked about on a morning show recently. It's like, boy, that is not an easy task, and you're bringing in a couple new guys who are transferring in from outside of the program. There's a lot of work that's going to have to happen on that offensive line over the spring and the summer. So bringing in a bunch of guys with maybe some different backgrounds and some different different skill sets and different specialties, like that's you're not limited in terms of the number of coaches you can have anymore. So like, yeah, go ahead. This is an area where Ohio State can capitalize and make use of their resources in something that other teams maybe can't necessarily do.
And it's a different collection of coaches. Like Charlie Dickey is coached for nearly 40 years. Marcus Johnson's been a full-time position coach since 2016. Wandy Laurent is just kind of beginning in the first decade of his coaching career. So you've got a good mix of young and old and experienced and growing. So I just seeing all of those names, I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. Not you're bringing in like legit position coaches to be assistant to the assistant coach. And I think this shows a level of desire to develop players and to get the most out of them. And it's certainly a commitment to spending some money on the football program. But Lisa Sims' question about why aren't they doing a press conference and announcing this stuff? This stuff never really gets announced. These if you're not like an on the road position coach, then this is the kind of stuff that we talk about. The head coach will only talk about it if it's brought up during some other presser, and we're probably not going to get anybody until early March, hopefully before spring ball starts on March 17th, probably after the combine. That is the hope that we'll get the new assistants. And they certainly don't want this stuff. There's no radar for them to really worry about like right now. So it's not about like trying to sneak this past the goalie or anything like that. It's just, this is the stuff. This is the how the sausage gets made, Tom.
Well, these are guys who we won't necessarily get a chance to talk to these guys at any point this spring or summer. These are guys who are just at a level where, like, I don't think we ever got a chance to talk to Tim Drevno last year, for example.
We've only ever talked to James Laurinaitis in terms of like the analysts and grad assistants because he was James Laurinaitis, and that's the only reason.
Right. And so these are guys who, like I said, like you're watching an Ohio State football live stream on Wednesday, February 19th. So you can go ahead and put yourself in the top about 2% of, intensity of Ohio State fan. If you care about this stuff, you are probably you are in the elite of the elite of Ohio State fans. The majority of people, these are names they will never hear. These are names they will never know. As I said, these are names that outside of perhaps a cool nickname, I will put that caveat on it for Tony. These are names you're not going to hear a lot on the broadcast. You're not going to hear, you might hear Paul Keels talking about them because he's a little more dialed in with the program, but just whatever TV announcer who has flown in for the week, that's not something. These are not people that they're going to be talking to. These are folks that we will get a chance to talk to if we want to during like bowl media days. We could get a chance to talk to some of those guys when it's just everyone from the program is available. And, I talked to some of the sort of assistant position coaches in the lead up to the national championship game, for example, just because these are guys we don't get a chance to talk to normally. But yeah, as Tony said, this is not like you're trying to sneak it under the radar. There will be a press conference when they have the coaching staff 100% finalized and everyone's in town and no one's on the road recruiting and no one is on vacation and no one is whatever. Like this is just a time of year when the coaches have been in, like, everyone has been redlining their engines for 4 months now. So everyone's kind of ready to take a little bit of time and not be around the building necessarily 900 hours a week. So it's a lot more to do with that than it is with, they're trying to be sneaky with these guys or anything like that.
But I am with you, Lisa, and her next comment is like just wanting to hear from the coaches. Yeah, it would be great to hear from Ryan Day because you're seeing other programs, like we're seeing a lot from James Franklin in the Penn State side of things, where they're already they were deep into the playoffs. They've moved on and they're getting their spring coverage out there. and you're not really hearing anything other than Ryan Day talked with the TV stations last week, but there's been no like group type of deal en masse. And so, yeah, we're all waiting for that. And like I said, it's probably not going to be here for another couple of weeks. But we will be there when we're finally getting to talk with Ryan Day. And then I assume we'll talk with all of the new assistants. And when we do get to talk to Tyler Bowen, this will be an opportunity to bring these guys up. Even though, like, again, there's going to be so many other things to talk about when you're getting maybe 15 minutes with the new coach. You're going to be talking about the roster more than anything else and recruiting and things like that. Not that they can talk about recruiting, but you can talk in general, like, so can you recruit? You're like, that sort of thing. And that's a question for Ryan Day as well. Like, can your new coaches recruit? It's like, well, probably that's the plan. We'll see. But yeah, I know everybody's looking forward to talking to the coaches, and would also, Tom, be nice to be able to talk to the transfers that have come in and the early enrollees and all of those good things. But here we are still in a waiting pattern.
Yeah, and those are guys who many years we get a chance to talk to, like the whole schedule of all of this stuff and the whole scale of this stuff. Like, it used to be like, oh, you'd bring in one transfer and then we get to talk to them. Well, we got to talk to all the true freshmen. And that was when the season ended on January 1st or January 8th or whatever. And now it ends on January 20th. And you've got the whole post-national championship victory circuit, and you had the national championship celebration in the stadium. So you get to hear a little bit from guys at that. So it's a little bit of a different schedule this year. The spring ball got pushed back. The start of spring ball got pushed back a couple weeks. We've talked about that a little bit, but for folks who don't know, normally they would start with 2 practices the week before the spring break. Then this year they just pushed it back a couple weeks. It has no impact on the spring game. The spring game is still the weekend it normally traditionally would have been, which is, I think it's Saturday, April 12th, is when the spring, not the spring game, it's the spring, carnival, festival, jubilee?
Showcase.
Yes, that's right. The spring showcase showdown. Yes. Coming. And what is the spring showcase? Well, we're all out of time. That's something that we'll maybe get a chance to ask Ryan Day about, although I don't know if Ryan Day knows the answer to that question yet. So this is just a year when it's just a little bit off. It's a little bit, everything's a little bit on a different timetable. Tony and I were just talking about the fact that, at a certain point last year, we were already well into the wow, everyone's already back. And, we were doing all the here's all the guys who are back, and here are the guys who they've added. They had brought back all of their seniors, and they had added Caleb Downs in the portal, and they added someone else in the portal. Oh, they added Dominic Kirks as a February signee, and that had all happened by January 20th. That was the whole flurry of offseason moves that all happened, and that was by January 20th, and that was the day they played the national championship game this year. So the schedule is just really, really, it's just a little off, which is fine. I'm sure everyone's happy that they had football as long as they did, so that all worked out just fine. Lisa does want to know, is Ryan Day going to be taking a little vacation time?
Well, you already mentioned the Kelly Clarkson show, and the Tonight Show. Come on, you make a weekend trip out to LA, and then it's back to work. I guess right now, if there's not much recruiting, there's always kind of recruiting going on, but workouts are going on right now. Does he try to sneak away for a weekend trip to the coast, whichever coast, the coast of Greece, the coast of somewhere nice?
Yeah, I have seen Ryan Day adjacent people on Instagram at a beach recently, so I'm going to guess that Ryan Day has probably gotten out of town for at least a little bit of time. There are just such narrow windows of time. Right now, it's a dead period, or is it quiet period in recruiting? I don't remember which one. We're at a point where there's not a lot. I don't think they can do on-campus visits right now. I should have looked at this up before, but
you sure should have.
Yeah, I should have anticipated the question about Ryan Day vacation time, and that's on me. But no, this is a time when it's one of these narrow windows of time where there's not a ton going on campus, and kind of Mickey Marotti has the keys to the program right now and is running through the winter workout kind of stuff between the end of the regular season or the end of the college football playoff and the start of spring ball. This is kind of Coach Mick's time to shine. So you'll have, you can get some of these guys out and, have some, get your staff sorted out and get a little time away from the building. Because, once spring ball picks up and you have all the recruiting stuff coming, that's another busy season. There are only so many times during the year when it's like July is the only like really, really dead period where there's no one in the building. Other than that, these guys are working pretty darn hard, about 48 weeks or so a year. So this is one of the narrow windows of time when they can get out and do some other stuff.
And for as far as like when is Mickey Marotti's vacation, this strength coaches consider this part of the job their vacation when it's just them, hammering the players. This is what they live for.
Exactly. I'm going to hit this real quick from Butch Jones, former Tennessee head coach, ? Probably not. I'm still loving my natty confetti. Many, many thanks. Yes, for those of you who are not members of BuckeyeHuddle.com, we have mailed out hundreds is safe, literally hundreds and hundreds of envelopes of national championship confetti. There is a little bit still left. I have to steal the half bag that Tony has and combine it with the half bag that I have, and we can get a few more out. But if you've not gotten your national championship confetti yet, you can sign up at BuckeyeHuddle.com. It's on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. There's a thread on there in terms of how you can get yours. I will be mailing out another batch of that tomorrow. I have a couple people who had asked for that just in the last day or so. So if you want to get in on that, you can get in on that. Hundreds and hundreds of satisfied customers. Can't be wrong, Tony.
No, it certainly can't. And we've got, hopefully we got some more plans in the works on things of this nature. I did see, Geigerly, sorry if it's already covered, but can the support staff help in recruiting? How much and how little? They can help on campus. Like they can help in the Woody, and they can be part of that. Like James Laurinaitis was a very good recruiter on the phone and at home, but couldn't go out while he was as a grad assistant. Couldn't go out because he wasn't one of the 10 assistant coaches who could go and recruit. So they kind of have to just do it from home base, and how effective they are depends on the guy. Like Laurinaitis is very effective, but it's hard to close when you're just the guy there. And for whatever reason, you're not able to, like, I don't know why that would matter as much, because like he was the position coach when he was the grad assistant, but you couldn't go out and visit with families and things like that. So like if the parents aren't coming to see you, then it's hard to like get around that. But like their reputations, their history, their connections, like all of that is in play. They just can't sit in your living room, basically.
Yeah, and that's something you mentioned, James Laurinaitis, but I go back to Keenan Bailey. When Keenan Bailey was like the assistant wide receivers coach, he was really, really good at being an impactful part of the recruiting process without actually being there. Sometimes that's just like texting and staying connected and starting to build those relationships. And then when guys come to campus, you can obviously do that. And there's also kind of a loophole to this rule where it's like you have to designate the 10 guys who can be on the road. But for example, when Ohio State was going through the national championship process, you saw all sorts of support staff guys who were, again, people whose names you might not know, who were on the road, like Nick Murphy, who was a recruiting assistant. He was on the road. He was everywhere. I think he might have been in 15 states in about 5 days. I don't know how he got to all the places that there were pictures of him. It was like the week before the national championship game, but it's like, well, I think Tim Hinton might have been on the road. I mean, there were all sorts of guys who were out there who are not the guys who are normally on the road, but you can designate like, here are the 10 guys, and then they could go be on the road while the normal recruiting, designated guys would be, we're a little busy coaching the national championship game.
You want to go ahead and throw that Jeff Frazier up there, please?
Yes. I was just particularly Googling what the heck happened with Patrick Henry. Jeff says, Tony, how about your school? Very impressive.
Yes, the Patrick Henry Patriots 21-0 in the regular season this year, getting ready for the playoffs. I believe Antwerp is up next, but yes, on to victory, red, white, and blue, fighting Patriots. We cheer for you. So there you go, PHHS.
Wow, that's
very impressive.
Did Do you think it took longer than one possession of high school basketball for them to write that fight song? That doesn't feel like it was like the most high effort fight song.
Well, hey, I will let you know the school was started in like the 70s, so you do the math on that one. Okay.
Okay.
A lot of lead paint and whatever else.
I guess it's good that just all right are not lyrics in the song. That's okay. Probably for the best. All right. So there you go. Shout out Patrick Henry basketball. Well done.
Appreciate it.
We have Kevin Noon in the chat. It says arm day is vacation day. Yes, that's that if you're a strength coach, that's that probably is true. And I don't know that they are doing. I assume they're basically doing the normal, the normal winter workout stuff. There was a picture of Jeremiah Smith on social media, last night or today, where he was pulling something, and some people can pull off sleeveless T-shirts, some can't. He's the kind of guy that can pull off a sleeveless T-shirt. Looks like he's been working out, which is good. He was someone last year that you kind of looked at and went, the last time I thought I haven't seen a freshman who looks like that in a while was Chase Young. Chase Young, when he came in as a true freshman, it was kind of like, that guy's not a freshman. And Jeremiah Smith was very much that guy's not a freshman guy last year. He is literally not a freshman. Probably not great news for anyone else, any other programs. I did see, if you pull up that tweet from Ohio State football, there was an Oregon fan who was in the comments and telling him like, "Oh, put more weight on the sled." It's like, my dude, you may want to just sit this one out. 2025 is not off to a great start for Oregon football.
Yeah, that Jeremiah Smith looked like he's wearing a puffy jacket. It's like, no, that's sleeveless. That's a tank top.
Geiger Lee says, "Love the Whalers hat." Yes, this is a personal favorite of mine. This is one of my 2 Whalers hats, which I don't know. The other one's upstairs somewhere, but yes, this is what I throw on when I'm like, oh, I had a winter hat on to walk the dog earlier, and my hair is not camera ready. So there you go. Geiger Lee does want to know, how worrisome is it that Chris Henry is taking official visits at 4 other schools? And the 4 schools, I know Oregon. There was USC, and was it Miami was the other one?
I'm not sure.
There were 2 of them. There were 2 of them that I went, well, okay. Like right. USC, I think it was USC and Miami, because those are 2 schools that generally inspire that kind of reaction in my brain. Yeah. So, okay. Well, if you want to go play for Mario Cristobal, like, you go right ahead. If you want to go play for whoever's going to be coaching USC 12 months from now, which is probably not going to be Lincoln Riley, and Oregon, sure. I mean, Phil Knight still has a checkbook. Don't tell Oregon fans that. It has nothing to do with Phil Knight's checkbook. But when you look at the official visits, Ohio State's the last official visit. That's one of those little markers that you look at, and at this point, like, why would you not do your homework? If you're coming to Ohio State and let's say you're coming to Ohio State and it's because Brian Hartline is there. Well, what happens if Brian Hartline takes a head coaching job somewhere else and Brian Hartline's the main reason you're coming to Ohio State? Well, you'd want to have your options open. Like, this is, if you're just going through the college process with your kid, like, you'd probably want them looking at more than one school, because what if you don't get into that school? Or what if, the school decides to stop offering your major or whatever? These are obviously different concerns. I don't think Ohio State's going to stop offering, I guess football in this case as a major, but you want to keep your options open. The official visits don't cost you anything. You get to go there. They give you a cookie cake, and, you get to go watch a football game. So it's just, this is what recruiting is right now. There's no guarantee on anything, but Chris Henry has been about as, he has not really wavered in any material way. You saw the tweet from him about was one of the Michigan sites saying like, oh, could Michigan get in on on Chris Henry Jr., and Chris Henry Jr. quote tweeted it with a picture of Brian Hartline smoking a cigar. So that was his way of saying no. So, this is what recruiting is right now. You can't really fault someone for keeping their options open, but until there's reason to panic, like there's not reason to panic. And right now, whatever you want me to tell you, there's a 100% chance he signs with Ohio State. I don't think anyone can tell you that. That's okay. Like right now, he's committed to Ohio State. Ohio State has the last visit. There's no real reason for concern right now. And so, if you're looking for something to worry about, like, have you heard about the asteroid? That's, oh boy, 3% chance. Like, I don't know. Like, you can worry about that. I would just like, we'll keep you posted on the Chris Henry thing. But right now, I wouldn't be sweating it.
You say worry, I say hope. The official visits. So it's May 30th to Miami. Then a week later, it's at USC, which is kind of a home visit for him being out west in California. Then a week later, it's Oregon. And then a week later, it's Ohio State. And you look at this, and common sense and the people that are in the know will basically tell you, as long as Brian Hartline is at Ohio State, Chris Henry will end up at Ohio State. These visits, if you look at like just the schedule of them and having Oregon the week before Ohio State, he's going to get his market value. He's going to be able to go to Ohio State and say, this is my market value. Where am I in this to you? And what will make him happy? Do they need to be up top? I don't know that they do, because Brian Hartline is the biggest draw through all of this. This is why, was it 2 years ago now, 3 years ago in July when he committed to Ohio State, we were all there at some it was the thing that took over for Friday Night Lights, and we're all hanging out in the media. We're hanging out in the parking lot by the Woody Hayes statue at the WAC, and he comes out, and Pac-Man Jones is with him, who's his guardian, and Brian Hartline's out there as well. And so like one of us says like, so do you have any news to Chris Henry? And Chris Henry's like, I don't know. And then Pac-Man Jones is like, tell him if you want to tell him. And so then it's like, tell us what? Did you commit? And he's like, yeah, I committed. So that was I don't remember which July it was, but it was a couple of Julys ago. So yes, that was the same event where Ryan Day was crushing the competition. The competition being the high school recruits who were there. I don't think that's a great way to land commitments by embarrassing players in front of their families and like potential teammates. I think that's where the competitive nature, that's Ryan Day, the old point guard, that kind of got the best of him. You got to let that go, son. But these visits, they're gonna inform Chris Henry what other programs think he's worth, and then he's going to take that to Ohio State, and Ohio State's going to do what they do with it.
Right, and this is, as you said, like if Brian Hartline is at Ohio State, there's no real reason to think he's going anywhere else, and that remains true. And it's the same thing with Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith had lots of money, lots of big offers thrown at him. Even though he didn't go in the transfer portal, there were some offers thrown at him this offseason, as it turns out. But this is, there is a sort of big picture thing here, which is you can go chase an extra whatever, we'll say $1 million, and understand that is not an exact amount, but you can go chase an extra $1 million right now, or you can continue to get developed and be the number one-ish pick in the NFL draft in 2 years. Because he came to Ohio State because he felt Brian Hartline was going to be the best person to develop him. And Chris Henry, I'm sure that's the same thing with him. And there's a certain long-term vision there where until Oregon starts developing, wide receivers, what did Marvin Harrison go 3 overall? Like until Oregon starts developing wide receivers like that, like, okay, is it worth chasing a little bit of extra Phil Knight money right now? And
shoe deal.
You could get your own shoe deal. Yes. I do think it's pretty telling that, boy, it sure doesn't seem to happen with wide receivers very often. And it does happen with other positions. And so that's, I think if you're looking at Jeremiah Smith, you're looking at Chris Henry, until Brian Hartline is coaching somewhere else, I think I would feel reasonably comfortable with Ohio State continuing to do what Ohio State has been doing in recruiting at wide receiver.
I would agree.
So Jeff Frazier says, Oregon has to be pushing 40 million right now. All that money, still no natty. I have seen numbers, and I always am a little like, exactly how official is this number? I think Oregon was in the 23 million range last year, and I think Notre Dame was a little ahead of Ohio State in terms of, but those schools didn't put the number out on from any kind of an official channel, so you're just sort of assuming that those are about right. But yeah, I don't think anyone's in the $40 million range, and we'll see once the House settlement all gets agreed to. We'll see how that impacts things. It's going to put potentially some more sort of restrictions on that, but all of that, I mean, boy, we could do 2 hours on that and exactly what we're expecting to happen. And by the end of the show, I think we'd both kind of be going like, yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out, because there's so much right now that's like, maybe.
Well, and even without the House settlement, they're still going to go forward with the revenue sharing. So there will be a point here in the not too distant future where programs are pushing 40, especially if you're throwing in another 10 or maybe the full 20, or not the full 20, but like maybe 17, because who knows what Title IX is anymore at this point to get any of that money, because that's all a mess as well right now. So who even knows how to split up this money, but it's not going to stop them from doing it and then just correcting it on the fly if they have to.
Yeah, and that was something that there was guidance issued in terms of Title IX in, I think, early January, and then the administration in Washington changed, and then that guidance was rescinded. So like even some of that stuff has changed just over the last month or so. There's a lot of factors that go into that, and it's just kind of, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. This is an interesting one from Geiger Lee. Any sense for how much the coffers of OSU NIL swelled with the Natty? Do they ever share or hint how much is in the kitty? So they have to file, like officially, they have to file as a nonprofit. You have to file what's called a 990 with the IRS, but that happens like retroactively. Like I think the most recent one, I looked semi-recently, and the most recent one that was up for like the foundation, for example, which is the nonprofit NIL foundation, that the most recent one was 2022. So that's something that officially you're not going to hear any numbers for quite a while.
Yeah, and everything always swells with the national championship, so you would expect that to do that as well. But yeah, like the sharing in terms of like what are Ohio State players making, that came from Ross Bjork in an article where he threw the number 20 million out there. And I wonder if he's like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
Or like, well, 20 million is not even, that's not even the top of the leaderboard. But if you're the only person putting it out there, then you are at the top of the leaderboard. And he did not do Ryan Day any favors with that number. Although, Tom, they won a national championship. So maybe it was that pressure of that roster, that number that helped. But I don't think he's going to put it out there again. But I do know people are going to ask.
Sure, people are going to ask. Well, and what was it, 2 years ago that Ryan Day put out the number like 13 million to bring, just to kind of maintain the roster. So they've kind of put that stuff out there a little bit strategically, and it's just kind of a matter of, do you want to put it out publicly? Do you want to put it out just sort of within the walls of the facility with your boosters? How much does it leak from the boosters? Because sometimes people like to talk. People like to know stuff and talk about stuff sometimes, Tony. So there's that piece of it as well. It's just kind of a, I mean, I think you're going to probably not hear a ton about it, just because that's sort of been the broad, sort of the broad trend is that has not gotten really thrown out there a whole lot, but we'll see. Do we have any other?
We've already for A Meadows.
We already answered that. Yeah, the answer to the question on Chris Henry is, where is Brian Hartline coaching? If Brian Hartline's coaching at Ohio State, you should feel reasonably comfortable that Ohio State's going to keep Chris Henry Jr.
Yeah, and then to the Geiger Lee question, like subscription numbers are always kept pretty close to the vest for all sites. So, but everybody does better when the Buckeyes are winning, or whatever team you're covering.
Yeah,
everybody does better whenever that team is winning. You can ask the Michigan sites last year, or the Georgia. I assume they won it recently. I don't know. Georgia sites the couple years before then. Yeah, so like it always helps to win for sure. Although sometimes people will sign up to complain. And that's on all sites as well. So there's always that.
Yeah, famously, you do extremely well at like 1 to 2 days after a loss. Boy, is traffic high on everything. If go back and check, you can check at YouTube numbers at hey, after an Ohio State loss, the YouTube numbers are always great, and some of it's Ohio State fans who would like to tell you that everything is terrible and will be terrible forever, and some of it's fans of other fan bases coming to tell you that yes, it is going to be terrible forever. Good job for noticing that.
Good on you for noticing how terrible. And then Duck fans or Michigan fans doing their best to dunk on what just happened. So I think we pretty much talked this out, Tom. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I think
we do want to thank you all for tuning in here on this random Wednesday evening. We always appreciate that. That's why you got to hit the bell to be notified, subscribe to the channel, because who knows when we're doing stuff like this, because most of the time we don't know. But we've got more scheduled for you for the Buckeye Weekly podcast. Got a bunch of plans before spring ball. And like we said, we're like 4 weeks away from spring football. So get ready for that. And we will get you ready for that at the Buckeye Weekly podcast. And of course, we'll also get you ready for that at BuckeyeHuddle.com, or if you want to sign up now, first month just $4.99, talking about these additions, what they'll mean. Tom's going to get into the X's and O's of it with Ross Fulton and his guys, and all of our X's and O's guys about what might be being added to the program. So I look forward to seeing that in the next few days. And of course, like I said, BuckeyeHuddle.com, sign up now. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.